It's the matchup presented by DraftKings. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day and tuning in. This is episode number 4 of the matchup, back for season 2. And I got to tell you, we're on a little bit of a heater here. Last couple weeks. Last week, I was sweating it out. I mean, I actually saw my name late on a Saturday in the number 1 spot in the big game. $200,000 next to it, but we kind of slipped down. Made a little money though. It was a good week. Streelman kind of hurt me, but that's okay. The picks were good. The audience is growing, so we appreciate you being here. This week, a little bit different. Zurich Classic. It's a team game, and the first time DraftKings has put together a contest where we can play. So we have a lot to think about here. Got our models, we've got our thoughts, and I've got just the man to help me here. You know him on Twitter at TourPicks. Joe Idone, thank you for joining me here, man. How you doing?
Good. What up, Travis? Good to talk to you. Pleasure to be on the show. Interesting week, as you kind of alluded to this week with DraftKings. So, but I'm excited for it. So it gives us sort of a new wrinkle, a little break from, you kind of getting that mundane mid-season feeling. So it gives us a little break here, something fresh to think about and put the mind to. So. I know I was following along with your sweat last weekend as well. That had to be a fun ride on Sunday.
Yeah, it was fun.
Either way.
It was fun. That was probably the best I've done in the big game to get that late, up there in the top 10 and then, slip down a little bit. But it was a good week. And I've been looking at the pricing and these teams since they've come out, and they came out a little bit later. Even DraftKings is probably putting in the extra hours here. Right now with this, because there's a lot to think about. This is a team game. As I mentioned, they're going to play Thursday and Saturday. It's a best ball. And then Friday and Sunday, it's going to be alternate shot. So when considering that, there's 80 teams, 160 players. I mean, you name them, they're just about there. I mean, a lot of the big names, of course, are not there. But this is a big field. The cut, we're looking at 35 in ties for the cut. And they're playing TPC Louisiana, which is another Pete Dye golf course. 4th year here in the team competition, but they had a regular tournament stroke play event before that. So we know a little bit about the course. We don't get much in the way of stats as far as a team competition. So in many ways, there's a lot of different things in the way that you can play that. What kind of team is going to do well? Have you landed on anything yet as we get to break this down?
I've tried. No, but I've got a couple of ideas in head. It's still early in the week, but yeah, there's definitely, I think, some strategies out there that are in play. Obviously, you mentioned, I think it's our 4th time in 7 weeks at a Pete Dye course, and we've got 2 more coming up with Kiowa and Traveler. So we're fully in Pete Dye season here. While it's not always been here, one of the oldest running tournaments on tour goes back to the 1930s, I believe. So this event is kind of been a standard, and they've had 3 years now of switching over to this team format. So we've got a little bit of a basis and a little bit of some statistical stuff to go on. But that said, anytime you introduce a format like this, there's going to be a lot of wrinkles in play, a little bit of luck involved. Yeah. And for me, it's not so much a stat week. And I'm more this way anyways, Travis, but I'm more of just an instinct and a gut player and kind of looking at names and more of a feel better and DraftKings player. So this kind of aligns nicely for me. I'm excited for it.
Well, we got the perfect guest on here then this week. And, you look at the champions here, 2019, because we didn't have it last year due to COVID. Rahm and Palmer won it, of course. 18 was Horschel and Piercy. 17 was Smith and Blix. And in stroke play, Brian Stewart won the tournament in 16. Justin Rose in 15. Horschel won it back in 13. Duffner, Watson, Soon You'll Know was on there in 14. So there's a lot of names here. Some are in the field. And, obviously like the course from the stroke play standpoint. And then some just play good together, like a Rahm and Palmer. And we've seen other names pop up there that do fairly well in team competition, like a Charlie Hoffman and others that we'll get to. I'm looking at this course when I look at, and I've played TPC Louisiana as I had down in Harbortown. I really think, for me, the model that I used last week, and I like to put a model together, something to look at. It's not like the end of all.
Sure.
But I do think like a strokes gain approach, strokes gain putting to me was so high last week where I kind of, look, I'll take some inaccuracies off the tee, will sacrifice length, will sacrifice some around the green. I think this week, same approach, putting, elevate maybe a little driving distance, but I don't think short game's going to come in too much into play. And best ball, if you miss the green, your partner's probably going to be on the green, or at least he better be. If he's not, that's not going to happen very often. And then alternate shot, you're going to have a handful of situations. So I do think Louisiana, it lends itself to a little more distance off the tee, 7,400 yards, a little bit longer than Harbortown. A lot of water, a lot of sand, as Pete Dye likes. He'll give you some things to think about, but scoring should be pretty good. So we're going to get right into it here.
Okay.
And there's 11,000. That's where we're going to start here this week. And we're going to go through each range. I'm going to try to touch every player that we can, give you some thoughts. And then at the end, we'll give you our head-to-head, the key teams that we're looking at. And probably will play off of some degree with our lineups here. So in the 11,000s, no surprise, Schauffele and Cantlay will be the favorite, 11,700. Rahm and Palmer, maybe a little slap in the face there at 11,500, just under those two. Morikawa and Wolf, the youngsters, 11,300. And then Cam Smith playing great golf there with Mark Leishman at 11,100. What jumps out to you out of the gate here with these top four teams?
Well, I think that three of them are really viable. Would be a little bit most pause for concern on the Morikawa Wolf team, just because I feel like with those other teams, you have both players pretty much coming in playing equally well and in pretty good form. And Wolf just hasn't found it off the tee, particularly in an alternate shot format like this, where I know that they are alternating. One player is going to tee off all the even holes, one player is going to tee off all the odd holes. So Morikawa is going to be scrambling, I have a feeling, on a lot of those holes, unless he's figured something out. But he's so talented. And just, they haven't played in a team event before. This is both of their first times at this course. I really kind of like, going all the way down to Cam Smith and Leishman. You have a former champ in one who's in great form. And Mark Leishman played really well at the Masters. We don't have a lot of strokes gained stats to go off of, but it just seemed like he was making pars look easy out there, particularly on tough stretches of the course, like 4 through 6. I can remember definitively watching him, and he was like one of the only guys throughout the week to play that even par. His scrambling seemed to be there. They played in the team event together back in the QBE shootout in the fall, I believe that was, in top 10 there. So I like them. Of course, Rahm and Palmer obviously, go together pretty well here. So those are kind of the two that I've honed in on so far.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think Cameron Smith, I said last week, I think he's playing the best golf of his career right now. He had a tough Saturday, bounced back. I think he's a good team with Leishman. They obviously have a lot of experience, as you alluded to. Fifth at the Masters for Leishman. I think the key really for that team is probably going to be off the tee. Can they do enough off the tee? They can get a little erratic, both of them. Off of the tee, but iron game, putting, they kind of check both those boxes. I tell you, I'm this Morikawa putter thing, man, it pops up. And when it pops up and struggles, it's tough to watch. I mean, it almost looks a bit yippish at times. The struggles with the driver with Wolf, I agree. And the putter with Morikawa, I think I'm going to pass on them. And, I think Schauffele and Cantlay, Cantlay's, he's going to get it back, but he's clearly struggling right now. Rumor has it, I don't know, someone told me this on my podcast 2 weeks ago that he had a breakup with a girl. It's had a little bit of an impact on him. I don't know. I'm not spreading rumors, but that was something that was told me. Yeah, there's a good resource here. And I'll tell you what, man, he's playing like it. His game has went downhill. Perhaps he's has some things to think about. I don't know. But he has missed his last 3 cuts. Schauffele showed, some form there at the Masters. But I think, I hate to do the chalk here, but in this group, I think Rahm and Palmer, for me, are the guys. So we'll go head to head here. I'll give you John Rahm and Ryan Palmer here at 11,500. I think Rahm's now starting to settle in. The engines are starting to fire up here. Putter warming up, right? We saw a little spark there on Sunday at Augusta. Yeah. And I think he keeps that going. They're a good compliment, the team, and I'll give you them. Who do you got?
I'll go Team Aussie.
Okay.
I'll go Cam Smith and Leishman. Obviously, both Cam Smith played well last week, didn't finish great, but had that great round in there. Just has the ability to really go low. And both these guys, I feel like, make their fair share of birdies. Both coming off top tens at the Masters, seem to like playing with each other, and maybe I'm kind of looking at that this week, like what guys are excited to play together and have been looking forward to this event in a way. Like, hey, I can't wait till we play the team event here in a couple of weeks versus maybe some other guys. It's just kind of, they're just not as much into it as guys that are excited to play with one another. So I'll go ahead in my 11K pick there and take the Australians, Cam Smith and Mark Leishman.
Yeah, there's two theories in my head, and I'm convincing myself of both of them, and we've seen them both play out, certainly. One is, like, do you take two players that are very similar in skill set and play the same game? Maybe they both kind of struggle. They both hit at similar distances off the tee iron game. They kind of play the same types of shots, that kind of thing. Do you do that? Or do you try to play complementary golf where you have a really good ball striker and a really good putter, and I think when Piercy and Horschel won, Piercy was great ball striker and Horschel was making everything. So it was like that complementary golf. And then we've seen, players where I think like maybe Smith and Leishman kind of play a similar type of game.
Would agree.
And even like a Rom Palmer, perhaps, like, Rom's a better driver, but they can both putt, they can both get the ball in the hole, and there's some similarities though. So which way are you landing here before we get to the tens? Is there one or the other that you find yourself gravitating towards, or is it something different?
I think I'm looking for players that kind of complement each other's games, particularly when we get to like an alt shot format on Friday and Sunday. Rahm and Palmer seemed to be perfect this last year. I think they shot 65 in the alternate shot Friday last year, which ultimately won them the event. That's the round where they really separated themselves from the rest of the pack, and they got the win that way. So, there's other teams, like when we get down to like, right below this, you have Finau and Champ and guys who seemingly are great off the tee and are going to pound it down there, but they both struggle at time to time with their wedges. So I'm looking for, in a broader sort of macro perspective, I'm looking for guys that kind of can complement each other's games. And one guy on the team has got to be able to make enough putts to win this thing, because you're going to need a lot of birdies.
Well, that's a great segue into the 10,000. So let's do it here. We've got Watson and Scheffler. Speaking of, can they do enough with the putter? I think that's probably going to be the question with them. They're at 10,900. Finau, Champ, you brought up 10,700. Horschel, Burns, interesting team, 10,500. And then there's Kirk, another great week last week, 7 at the RBC with Brendan Todd, the Georgia Bulldogs coming in at 10,100. I think of this group here, the team that's probably the most interesting to me is Horschel, Burns. I've been big on Burns for a while. I really like his game. I think he's got the game that's going to last on the PGA Tour. He's clearly still learning some things, young guy out of LSU. Who is going to be excited to play this week. I think, coming back here to Louisiana. I think he showed some more signs after 3 missed cuts at the RBC. He finished 39th, but Burns he's long off the tee. He's a very good iron player, and he's usually a good putter. The putter has let him down as of late, but I think some home cooking here could be right what he wants. We know Horschel's playing good golf. We know he likes this golf course. To me, I look at these 4. Those are the two. That team stands out to me at 10,500. What do you say?
Yeah, I think they're going to probably be the most popular team this week, and with good reason. You mentioned Horschel not only has the team victory, but has an individual victory here. Burns has sort of the narratives of coming back down to Louisiana, and maybe this gets his breakthrough at this event. But when actually, I built some lineups earlier today, and if you're going to take one of those teams at the top, right, one of the 11K teams, it's a little bit hard to kind of fit them in without going with two teams really low. To have one team at 10,500 and then you do Rahm and Palmer at 11.5, you don't leave yourself much room. I'm kind of looking a little bit. I like Chris Kirk and Brendan Todd. I know you're a big Kirk guy. He rated out number 2 in the sort of, I don't know how much it's worth, but the statistical model I went with this week. And then, college roommates, right? They played all 4 years together at UGA. They won a national championship together. I know that Brendan Todd and hearing Chris Kirk talk about it was kind of instrumental in helping him get through some of his personal struggles because they are really good friends. So I kind of touched on this earlier, but I think these two guys have kind of maybe had this event circled for a few months and been like, hey, let's go out there. I can't wait to play with you. Like, we play all our practice rounds together. Let's go get it. They're both in decent form. Todd's not playing great, but he's making a lot of cuts, right? He's 10 out of 11 cuts made. He seems like the type of guy who maybe this type of environment sort of frees him up to make some putts back on Bermuda grass where he's familiar. I just liked a little bit of discount there on that team at the bottom of the tens.
Yeah, we're tracking the same way here. You go back up to Watson, Scheffler. Bubba was 26 at the Masters. Scheffler was 18th. I think they've both got good length off the tee. I think similar, perhaps, skill set. That's a weird team to me. I
thought the same thing.
I'm having a hard time.
How did it come about?
I don't know.
Who asked who in that scenario?
I don't know. I'm having a hard time wrapping my arms around that one. I really am. And then Finau Champ, to me, it's a similar story. I mean, let's see. With Finau, I can't even read my writing. He was 10th at the Masters. 26 for Champ, who had a good tournament and really hasn't done much leading up to that. But again, it's like 10,700. Can they do enough with the putter? For those two, I do think Finau is a better putter than he has been and that he gets credit for and is a world-class player. You could certainly talk me more into Finau Champ, I think, over Watson Scheffler. But in the matchup here, I'll give you the Gator. I'll give you the SEC squad here, but it's not the Georgia Bulldogs. I'll give you the Florida Gator, Billy Horschel, and the LSU Tiger, Sam. I'm such a sucker for Sam Burns. It's crazy. Burns and Kirk. Everybody's like, that's all we hear from you is Burns and Kirk. I'm like, no, it's not true. But I am back on Burns this week.
Okay, I'm glad you left them hanging for me. I'm going to take them Bulldogs and run with it, baby. I'll take Kirk and Todd. I really like that pick this week.
All right, that's fair enough. Let's move on here. 9,000s. Yeah, because you're going to, I think you make a good point. I think in the lineups, I probably will come off of the 11,000s and then go, into Horschel, Burns, Kirk, and Todd, and really start from there with most of my lineups. I'll certainly throw a couple in there with the lead of Rahm and Palmer and perhaps Smith and Leishman, but I think the majority will be starting in that mid-10 range. And then as we get into the nines, we've got Gooch and Homa, who I think is an interesting team. Both of these guys have shown some good signs here this year. 9,900. Hovland Ventura, Oklahoma State, Big 12 represented, 9,700. Brandon Grace, Harold Varner, I think deserves some eyeballs at 96. Rose loves this place with Stenson, 95. Louis and Charles, 94. Keegan, Brendan Steele, interesting, 9,300. And then perhaps the most interesting to me, Peters and Lewis at 92. My boy Sung Jae Im with Ben On at 91. And then Joel Damon with Lanto Griffin at 9,000. So any of these teams, you look at this list, you're like, I'll pass on one or two that you just kind of put an X through.
So in terms of putting an X through one, I would probably pass on. It's tough here. Probably Rose Stenson, I think, if I had to cross one out. I just think Justin Rose, we saw he played so well at the Masters, but it just kind of felt like he had a really hot stretch of 11 holes there and was kind of hanging on for dear life, so to speak. Stenson's just been out of whack, man. He's fallen off the face of the earth with his game. So I know that they've played this event a couple times before together before Stenson had the injury in the earlier years. I know that Rose is a former champ, but they give me the sort of most pause for concern here.
Okay. Rose is he's a former champion here. He's played this golf course extremely well. I think he's back to where he needs to be with Foley. And I think Rose made some really out of characteristic decisions, at least from my standpoint, from an instruction side, that being more my trade. And I think he's kind of back to where he needs to be. And now Justin Rose is starting to kind of show us the same things. But I do agree. I mean, how much is Stenson going to carry you. That 9,500, it feels like there's other options at that price. I think, when you look at, I keep my eyes keep going back to Gooch and Homa. I know they're a little pricey at 99, but I do find them quite interesting. Gooch has played pretty well. We know Homa played well early in the season, although these missed cuts at the Players and the Masters, I think kind of leads into the Max Homa brand, which is he's a good player, but in the big events, the majors, there's still that learning curve to be had. But I think in this kind of field and format with Taylor Gooch at 99, a little spendy, but I'm going to come down here. I like Peters and Lewis. I really do. I think Thomas Peters is a real big time player. We don't see him a lot. Perhaps a little underachieved in the way of wins, but he's got that long game. He can play the long ball, solid iron player. And with Tom Lewis at 92, I see some value there. Am I wrong?
No. And another thing that we didn't really touch on, but is interesting for a lot of these guys coming up in the next couple of ranges is, it's kind of like an offshoot event, but there are big time career implications for these guys. Sure. Should they get a victory, especially to predominantly Euro guys like this. You get your card locked up for 2 years, you get into the Players, you get into the Tournament of Champions, you get into the PGA Championship, you get all the FedEx Cup points that come with a normal event, plus $1 million payday for each guy. So I think that there's a ton of incentive for a team like that to come over here and play well, especially sort of leading into the next swing. I kind of like, I like the one right above them in Keegan and Brendan Steele. I know that they're good buddies as well. They travel a lot together. They play a lot of practice rounds together. Keegan is striking the hell out of the ball right now. He is, and he's just, his irons are in. He's got 13 of the 14 clubs in the bag dialed in. He just can't putt. And maybe an event like this, I don't know. I mean, you're more into the mental and instruction side, but does something like this maybe free him up a little bit putting where okay, so Steele's in for par or something like this, you can kind of really just go at and just try to make birdies. And does the format, you think, maybe mentally free him up on the greens to be a little less stressed and anxious over the ball?
I think it 100% does, especially on the Thursday, Saturday. I'm totally with you. I will have a win ticket on Keegan Bradley and Brendan Steele. I think they are a bit of a sleeper here, the 9,300 range. You mentioned Keegan's putter. He's slowly kind of piecing some things together there. There's some life here with the putter, and I'm very optimistic about it. We know he's a world-class ball striker. I mean, he will ball strike your face off. I mean, he is such a good iron player, gets the driver going, this little 2-yard fade. But you look at him statistically, 10th at Arnold Palmer. I mean, he was positive 1.4 putting, 29th at the Players, positive 2.3 putting, 23rd at Valero, positive 1 putting. I mean, this is a guy that's -5, -6, -7 strokes gained putting. I mean,
that's a regular
real
thing.
Growth here happening in 3 of the last 4 tournaments. So you put that with Brendan Steele, who we know can go, and we know is a very good putter. This team makes a lot of sense for me, and I'm with you, man. 9,300. Peters and Lewis, 92, playing for a lot. My eyes are really drawn to those two. I think Ben On's just not doing enough for me. And Sanjay M is just, you just don't know what you're going to get with them. I've just decided that I'm not playing Sanjay anymore because I will not get on the right side of him anymore.
He's so perplexing to me right now because if you look kind of in going back, I looked at the last 36 rounds. He's number 1 in the field off the tee. But if you look at opportunities gained, which is a stat I think Fantasy National has, which basically looks at, are you giving yourself chances to make birdies? 109th. So how do you go in the same time frame where you're the number 1 guy off the tee box, but you're 109 and giving yourself looks at eagle and birdie, good opportunities. So it's just strange because you think of him as such a ball striking phenom a year ago, and it's just fallen off to the point where I don't think I can play him right now either.
Oh, I totally agree. He did hit his irons better last week at RBC, 13th. His putter's been fantastic.
Yeah.
And you're right. He's a wonderful driver of the ball, but his approach game has struggled. I mean, that's been, that's been a real issue for him. And I can't wrap my mind around that team. I'll pass on Joel Damon and Lanto Griffin, although I love the progression of Lanto. Of course, Damon had the win.
Yeah.
But I think I'll pay up a couple hundred for the two teams that we mentioned. I think Louis and Charles, I think they deserve a little bit of respect here. Louis 26 at the Masters. Charles was also 26 at the Masters. And, I think, these two guys know each other. And, who knows? Maybe they're a little inspired by what they saw by Stuart Sink, the veteran, going out there and getting it done. But I agree with you, those two. What about Hovland? I mean, who are you going to take here? If we had someone ask you the question of, all right, well, what about these top two guys, Gooch Homa versus Hovland Ventura? Either one of those teams jump at it? Yeah, and we'll even throw Grayson Varner in there at 96. Give me one of those three that you like the most.
I would take Homa and Gooch. Okay. I think that, Gooch is playing sneakily very well lately. While he hasn't played a lot of tournaments, he's playing pretty well. Max Homa is probably maybe on the tail end of it, but was in the midst of probably the best stretch of his career. I think the confidence is there. I know they're good friends as well. He mentioned, I think, post round when he won at Riviera that being able to play that final round with Taylor, he said this in the interview. He's like, me getting to play with Taylor really calmed me down and elevated my game. So he played in that final group with Taylor Gooch, which, I think he credited in terms of giving him, putting him in the right mental space to close that thing out, even though he made it a little sketchy down the stretch. But that would be my pick. If I were going to pick one of those three, I'd pay up the extra couple bucks for Homa Gooch.
Yeah, they're at 32-1 right now on a win ticket. You've got Grayson Varner, who I mentioned. Varner second at the RBC last week. Brendan Grace has played pretty well also. 35-1 is where they are. This is coming off the DraftKings Sportsbook. And some other ones here as we kind of work through this 9,000 range. 10,000. We've talked about Brendan Todd and Chris Kirk at 25-1. Louis and Charles at 28-1, getting some respect.
Yes, certainly compared to the DraftKings price. Yeah, the betting odds are definitely giving them some more respect there.
And then Hovland Ventura at 45-1. The thing with those two, this could be their event. I mean, they both struggle with short game. That's kind of their deal. So we know Hovland can go. Ventura is certainly not the player Victor is. And there's Peters and Lewis at 50-1. You could probably talk me into that. I mean, I might have to venture into that one as well, as you make some good points there about them coming over from Europe here. And a lot at stake because it is full 2-year exemption for both players and just over $1 million for both players if they win. All right, I'll give you Peters and Lewis. Those are the two that I'm taking. I've stated my case. Are you going with Keegan and Steele, or are you going?
Yeah, I'm going to go. I stated my case as well. I rested on Keegan and Brendan Steele, so I'm hoping the putters heat up at least for one of them.
Yeah. All right, let's move on here. All the way down now into the 8,000s. Oh gosh, there's Strillman and Fratelli at 8,900. Lucas Glover playing some good golf with Reavie at 88. There's Brown and Kisner. They know a thing or two about this event at 87. McDowell Wallace, 86. Wallace playing some nice golf right now. Alex Noren and Norlander, who has just fallen off the face of the earth at 8,500. Hoffman, Watney, 84. Interesting. Kokrak Perez, 8,300. Van Roy and Wyndham Clark, interesting, 8,200. Gim Sue, 81. Castro Tringali, who's done well here, at 8,000. Cross one off for me or two. The two that you're like, no, I'm
so out. I would cross, for me, if I had to cross them off, it'd be Clark, Van Ruin, just because not much that I really put together there was really adding up for me. And then Noren and Norlander. You said, Norlander's form has just really kind of cratered lately. And Alex Noren has just struggled to get back to where he was at. What was it, 2-3 years ago, where he was a top 15 player, was coming with a lot of Euro numbers in there, but he was one of the top players in the world and one of the top Europeans. So he really just failed to kind of get that win at Torrey Pines a couple of years ago. And I know he's dealt, I think, with some injuries, but those two for me are just kind of ones that I crossed off, going down the list here.
Can you cross off Brown and Kisner because they're just playing such bad golf? I mean, both these guys had more form coming in the past.
Yes.
Kisner is not playing well. I mean, I think we're three straight missed cuts. He's not hitting the ball good. He's giving up way too much length to be short, to be crooked. You can't be short and crooked out there. We know he can putt.
That's a good point.
And Brown, kind of a similar story, not playing good. I mean, can we just put an X through him because they have no form at all?
I'm going to take him, actually. Okay. I'm going to kind of go contrarian here and take them. I actually bet them 55-1 earlier today. So they're one of only 4 teams in the field who've every year that they've had the team event have played this together. They obviously lost in a playoff in the first year, so a second there, a 5th last year, a 15th in between the two of them. So, I think this type of event may be just what the doctor ordered for a guy like Kisner. So kind of get back to the team format, put a little bit of the bulldog attitude back in him and stop thinking so much about maybe the mechanics of his putting and just get out there with Scott Brown, who they know they play together out of Palmetto there all the time. So just get together with a buddy, go out to a place where you've had a ton of success, should feel very comfortable, and I'm going to play him.
Yeah, I mean they've had the most success right at this tournament for sure, the two of them. So perhaps that's what they need. Just get back together, the band's back together, and just play the tune. Subconscious, give me the ball, off we go.
Yeah.
There's two teams that have that. It's that kind of the crutch. There's two guys playing absolutely terrific, consistent golf. Matt Walsh being one of them.
Yep.
And then he's with McDowell.
I know.
Can Graham McDowell muster up enough here with Matthew Walsh? And then the other team, Charlie Hoffman, who's on fire.
I know.
Beautiful golf. Had his coach on the podcast 3 weeks ago. You could see this coming. Longer off the tee. Approach game's better. He's putting better. Everything's going this way. Not surprising to see him playing exceptionally well. Then he's with Nick Watney. It's like, who's missed 13 straight cuts.
God, is that real?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
13 straight cuts. I mean, can they muster, hey guys, maybe a quick lesson on the tee before they go out, and let's take a look at that putting real quick. Couple tips, off we go. I mean, could you take one of those or both?
I would say I just think, and you make great points. Both Wallace and Hoffman are in incredible form. Hoffman rated out extremely well in my model. I think he's playing with Watney in the same situation that I mentioned with Kisner Brown. He's one of those one of 4 teams who they've played together every year together. Watney obviously is in probably the slump of his career right now. As you said, 13 straight cuts is no joke. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Charlie can kind of inspire him on the range, give him a tip or two this week. But, at 8,400, I could see myself just taking the upside in. Charlie's making a ton of birdies.
Yeah.
So if he can go out there and make 6-7 birdies, maybe they only need 2 or 3 out of Nick Watney and his, a lot of this, Travis, and this in the best ball, there's an element of luck here in that if you both make birdie on the same hole, what good is it? Yeah. But if Hoffman birdies here and Watney doubles, but then Watney can follow up the next hole with a birdie, that's so much. So you have to things have to kind of work in your favor, and everything has to align correctly. So if I had to pick between those two, I think I lean Hoffman and Watney there.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think Hoffman's been more impressive than Wallace. I think Kokrak's been very impressive, playing good golf. I think Perez can rally. I think he's the kind of guy that can get it together. As far as the top side here, 8,900 Streaming and Fratelli, that feels a little spendy for me.
Yeah.
And
same.
Glover and Reevy at 8,800, that feels a little spendy for me. So I think I'll pass on those. I'll probably even pass on Kisner Brown. I know they've had good success here. I'm just a little concerned with Kisner right now. But I think for me, my eyes kind of tend to come over here. I kind of like this Tringali Castro because I know I can't, I can't, maybe save 300-400 here, come over here. And Tringali's been playing great golf. I think Castro, I think, can do enough as a veteran here. He's actually, but recall, has played okay here at this facility. So at 8,000, I could be talked into them. And Gim showed signs on Sunday, but man, his putter, goodness gracious, that dude runs chilly with the putter. I mean, when it goes, it goes. Justin Sook, be interesting player. He's done some opposite fields events. The Gim Sook kind of feels like they could be, they could get hot. Like that's the team to me that feels like they've got that live wire in there where they could just start rattling off some birdies, little volatile, kind of ham and egg it kind of thing. That's the team at 81 and Tringali and Castro at 8,000. I don't have a lot of money to spend here, as you mentioned, if I'm a little top heavy up there. So you could kind of talk me into kind of going down to those two. But in the middle range there, I think I agree. I think the Hoffman Watney at 84 is probably the better play. All right, so let's go. I'm giving you Gim and Sook.
Okay. I'm going to take, I'll take my guys, Brown and Kisner. I'll go with the old trusty horses for the courses this week and hope that they can pull together a little bit of form and rally.
Hey, these young pups got to step up here. 47.
I like that play. That's a fun team. The Gim and Sue is a fun team. Like
it is. I can see them getting hot.
Same.
I think you make a good point about these putters like Keegan. When we say someone struggles putting on the PGA Tour, it's relatively speaking to other PGA Tour players. They're taking my money left and right.
Oh yeah.
But Gim is a streaky putter. I mean, he is a streaky putter. And when it goes cold, it is like cold. He might as well just take the 5-iron out. And I do think Justin's an interesting player. I like them. It'll be fun to watch that team. And Brown and Kisner, these young pups, man. 47-year-old Stuart Sink goes out there and beats their ass. Like it's time to, get the juices going here a little bit and step up. All right, 76. Masvidal and Usman put on a show the last time they stepped into the octagon. Round 2 is sure to pack a punch. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC, is putting you in the center of this weekend's title fight with 26-1 odds on either title contender to reign victorious. Pick either main event fighter to win during this weekend's UFC 261 title fight, and DraftKings Sportsbook will give you 26-1 odds. Just bet $5 on either fighter to win, and if they walk out with the belt, you will win cash $130. There's no better way to put your MMA knowledge to test than to put your money where your mouth is with DraftKings Sportsbook. Don't worry if MMA isn't for you. DraftKings Sportsbook offers great odds and promotions on basketball, hockey, and so much more. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code Travis when you sign up to turn $5 into $130 if the title contender of your choice wins. Place your bet and watch the fist fly this weekend. That's code Travis to turn $5 into $130 if the fighter of your choosing takes home the crown. For a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. For 7,000s now.
Okay.
We're going to give you 2 picks each in the 7s, and then we're going to give you 2 picks each in the 6s. Lots to think about here. Is there a team in the 7s that perhaps jumps out at you?
Yeah, there's one that really jumps out to me. I think it's going to jump out to a lot of people, and it's Matt Neesmith and Chase Seifert at 7,500. Okay. It's probably going to be a regular in most of my lineups this week. Seifert's just been playing really well. He seems to have found a little bit of a comfort zone on Pete Dye courses, particularly played really well at the Amex. 3rd at the Honda, which I know isn't Pete Dye, but it's a lot of water, shorter Bermuda grass course. You may be able to comp a little bit to TPC. played well at the Valero, decent finish at the Heritage last week. So I think he comes in with just enough. And Matt Neesmith is another guy who's just striking the hell out of the ball. He's one of the top approach guys in the field this week. I think his greens in regulation number is, his divot repair tool is getting a workout lately because he's fixing a lot of ball marks on the greens. He's hitting it. He's hitting everything. It's off the charts. And I think that he's just going to give them a lot of opportunities. I like the upside of this team a lot this week. I think they're too cheap.
Yeah, I think Neesmith's one of the more underrated ball strikers on tour. And it comes down to his putter always. And it showed a little bit of sign, made the cut last week. And that's and Seifert, you're right. I'm with you there. I'll probably surprise you here a little bit. 7,800. I like Brian Stewart here a lot. And I'm going to put Russell Knox in there. I know Russell, he lives here in Ponte Vedra. I've seen him around, not his best form right now. And it's just that darn putter. I think he does enough off the tee. I think he's doing enough approach game, but he needs to find some form with that putter. And it happens, and it shows up, and then it's there for 2 or 3 weeks. Stewart won the stroke play here when it was a singles tournament back in 2016. 18th at the RBC last week. Thought he played well. So, all right, Russell, let's wake up the putter just a little bit. And I think this could be a good team at 7,800. Who else you got?
Okay, so right below both those teams, actually, I'm going to do a little Party Marty Laird and Nick Taylor, the Desert Fox and the Canadian.
Yes.
Listen, they've got back-to-back top 10s together at this event. I feel like they have a good complementary skill sets. They're both going to hit a lot of fairways, and they're not going to hit many in the water out there. I know there's a good bit of swamp, surrounding some of these holes. And I just think that I would just like them playing together. I think they've got a good complementary skill set. They had a 74, I think I looked up, in the alt shot last year, which killed them. Obviously when Rahm and Palmer go alt shot 65, they're making up a ton of strokes on the field. But in the best ball days, they had 2 of the better rounds that there were like last year's event. So I think that they enjoy this format. I think that they enjoy playing together. They've had a little bit of success, and I like the price.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one there. I like that one as well. That was another one of my picks. I think those 3 are good. I'll give you one that makes no sense whatsoever. There's always that one, right? In this, it just doesn't make any sense. You're just like, wait, what? What just happened? Like Blix and Cam Smith at the time didn't make a lot of sense, did it?
No sense, no.
I mean, when they won, it was just like, what the hell is going on, right? So here's this year's team. You ready?
Yeah.
It's Michael Thompson and Will Gordon.
Okay.
I mean, how did this team come about is what I want to know.
It's an interesting team. Another one that I found was really crazy, where you have to ask yourself, how did this team come about, is Scott Piercy and Batia.
Yeah.
And I feel like they could go out there and make a ton of birdies, because Batia makes a lot of birdies, and maybe they catch the right, things align right where they're making birdies on opposite holes. But there's, like you said with Thompson, there's a couple of teams that are very interesting this week. But like you said, this format lends itself to a little bit of these long shots, kind of quirkier picks. So it's fun, definitely in this range.
You think like Blix and Cam, both of those guys, Jonas, who I know very well here, when he was having his run, his driver was always the issue. I mean, one of the best putters I think I've ever watched putt in person. I mean, just a brilliant putter. Wonderful around the greens, decent iron player. And we know Cam has now matured into a very top shelf player. Still kind of can get a little weird off the tee from time to time. But, you look at that team and you're like, wow, they both kind of struggle driving. They're both probably at the time, okay iron players and can both roll it. They're just great putters. And I look at Will Gordon, he's long.
Yeah.
He's going to chew you up a little bit off the tee. And Michael Thompson, he's a great putter, right? And they're both okay. Strokes gain approach. I mean, not ideal, right? So doesn't make a ton of sense. There's your team this year. Michael Thompson and Will Gordon. Got anybody else there that jumps out at you?
I kind of wanted to ask you about one guy, and I'm very bullish. I got a close spot in my heart for this guy, and he's struggling right now. He's up there in your Ponte Vedra area, but he's teamed with Sam Ryder, who's playing really well right now, third at the Honda. But what's going on with Doc? Like, you have any insight there that can help? Like, I felt like it was turning around, and I made a play on him at the Heritage, and then he shot like 84.
I'm not sure really what happened there with Doc and missing the cut at Derby C, and then he missed the cut at the Players. It just hasn't been good at all. To your point, you got to go all the way back to the end of last year where he was finishing fourth at Bermuda, third at Safeway.
Yep.
I think he's a player who obviously is a wonderful ball striker, but something, I think in the tee game is clearly off the tee has now kind of bled into strokes gain approach, which is now starting to bleed into the other parts of the game, which you see from time to time. I think with Doc, it's probably happening the other way where he relies on his ball striking, and all of a sudden one of those have come loose, and now it's there's a trickle down, right? Where you saw with Spieth, it was his putter, and then there was a trickle down into the ball striking. And I think we're probably seeing it with Doc now a little bit. So hopefully he can put an end, because strokes gain off the tee in the negative the last 4 or 5 weeks, and the same in strokes gain approach. He's not going to get it done with Doc Redman. That doesn't add up, from that standpoint. So, and then the approach or around the green, he lost 5, so man, he's got some repair work to do there. I'm not sure what happened to that game, but we need to get Doc Redman back hitting the ball good again. All right. 6,000s. My goodness. You could probably talk to me in just about anything here.
It's a little ugly. Yeah. It's a little ugly down here.
So hold on before we get there. All right. So I'm going to pull up. Oh, shoot. I think, hold on 1 second here.
Yeah.
So I pulled up, put that model in there from, I just adjusted it from last week. That worked really well. A little more on the driving this week. And I'm going to plug that in. And we're going to go last, and I got Fantasy National here as well. I know you use that. It's a wonderful tool.
Yeah.
Last 24 rounds coming in, and we're going to look at the 6,000s here. And based off of this model here, who's playing some of the best golf, right? And the first name, here's some names. I'll just rattle them off here. Roger Sloane pops up there. Andrew Putnam, Bo Hoag, K.H. Lee, Bryce Garnett, Harry Higgs, seen him pop up there. Mark Hubbard, no surprise. Peter Malnotti, we've seen him, although he's kind of fizzled out a little bit. Andres Romero. Is Romero playing in this?
Who's he partnered with?
I don't know.
I don't see him here. I don't see him.
So these names are just coming from just a simple model, weighing it out. Strokes gain approach, strokes gain putting, way up there. I put some opportunities gained in there, which you referenced, par 4 scoring, par 3s, 200 to 225 yards. You got big par 3s here at this golf course.
Yeah.
So just kind of, weighing that out on the way down. And those are the names coming in last 24 rounds that are, according to Fantasy National, playing the best golf. Any of those jump out to you that would make it on one of your teams?
Yeah, so you mentioned one. Actually, I do see Romero here. He's teamed up with Vegas. So that's an interesting team. But one guy that you mentioned, and you actually mentioned as well, the reason that kind of put me on him is those longer par 3s. Over 200-yard par 3s seem to they're tough, and a lot of these guys who play them really well can tend to gain a lot of strokes on the field if they play them well. The number one guy that I had, and I usually go a little bit longer, back to 36 rounds, was Bryce Garnett. I think that he's playing great, fairways, greens, he's putting well. He does all these things, which can, I know Scott Stallings isn't coming in great form. And if he was, there's a reason all these guys are in the 6Ks, right? Everything's not going to be roses down here. So Stallings isn't playing great, but he does have a lot of familiarity both at this course and in the team event at this course, has played it all 3 years. So that's one team that I kind of have circled here that I'm going to go down to, at 6,800 there.
Is it just me, or is Vaughn Taylor's name showing up a lot as of late?
Yes. And I love the Hoge card as well. I feel like that's a very interesting play. He's a guy that you're not going to see much on Fantasy National about, just because most of all his stuff is European Tour stats, and he's not going to pop off these models too much, but the kid makes a lot of birdies.
Ton of birdies. Yeah. I really like that team. I like Hogard and Taylor, and notice how I just rattled off all these names, top 24 coming in, and neither one of those names were on that list. That's how we do it here, folks, on the matchup. But that's my favorite team in the sixes. I'm with you on Hogard. I think he could come in and fall out of bed and make 5 or 6 birdies pretty easily. Mm-hmm. And Vaughn Taylor, look, his name pops up. There he is, 65. Oh man, Vaughn Taylor. Beautiful swing, kind of plays his game, keeps it in front of him, plots his way around, doesn't make a lot of mistakes, doesn't make a lot of big numbers. I think that could be an interesting team. What else?
Just a pure, I think, upside play here, and hoping that they catch the right circumstances with birdies, is Malnotti and Baker. Baker, they're both just very volatile players, in that they seem to have one really low round followed by one really high one. So I'm just kind of hoping to marry those two together and it be the right setup for them. But they're all the way down at 6,200. So if you're going to, if you need someone with upside that you think can make a lot of birdies to pair with Rahm and Palmer up at the top, I think that they make a lot of sense down there at 6,200.
Yeah, I had them circled as well. I think that's an interesting one. Now, Andrew Landry went to LSU as well. Yeah, so Landry's an LSU kid coming back, has a lot of familiarity with this golf course, with Austin Cook, who showed some signs. Okay. I could let my eyes go there at 66. I'll definitely play some of that as well. And I'm looking who Roger Sloane. So he's with Badley. Interesting. So Sloane, one of the top-rated players last 24 rounds, according to this model, coming in with Badley. We know he can putt. 6,500. I could probably be talked into that as well. So there's 5. Anyone else that you could throw out there?
You had mentioned Andrew Putnam, seems to pop in a lot of the statistical things. Great putter. We saw him, I think he topped 5 at the Players, kind of a little bit out of nowhere, but him and Scott Harrington, and the two things that really stick out to me about their play, and I think Putnam's the number one guy in the field this week, is their ability just to scramble. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think when you get into an alt shot format, that can come into play, because you're not playing your own tee shot. If one guy's a little wayward, just the ability to get that up and around the green and be able to make pars. And it's just the type of format where bogeys are going to kill you. Oh, yeah. You've got to go probably 20 to even 28 under par or something like that to win this thing. So you can't make bogeys. You got to be able to scramble when you're in a little bit of trouble out there. And there's a good bit of it, as you've played it. There's a good bit of it lurking out there.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's trouble there. You've got a lot of water, and you've got a lot of sand, and I think it can play. I don't know how soft it's going to be. I think that'll be interesting. I think that'll be a key question as we get closer to the weekend. If it does play softer, then you certainly are going to have much more of an advantage here with the distance off of the tee than we saw last week, which a lot of the plays was just about positioning, and it's forcing your hand to hit irons and 3-woods off the tee, which we saw Stuart Sink do, who's put on more distance and be able to kind of manage himself around with the fairway wood. So another Pete Dye design. My goodness, there's a lot to consider. We touched a lot of names and a lot of teams. We hopefully that's going to help out your fantasy lineups. Put them together. You still have times as they'll tee off on Thursday morning. Hey, great job. Hopefully, hope I didn't take up too much of your time there. I know you just kind of redid everything there. It looks great.
Absolutely. A ton of fun. I appreciate you letting me hop on with you and talk to some of your viewers and listeners. And best of luck this week with DraftKings. It should be an interesting and fun week. And like I said earlier, I'm really looking forward to seeing how it shakes out.
All right, Joe Idone, go check him out at Tour Picks. He has a couple other shows that he does as well. You'll see him there on his site. This has been the Matchup. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.